this. All right, what's the date today? 22nd? 23rd? Today's 23rd? 26th. Okay. January 26th. Okay. Just real quick review here. One of the major themes in talking about Hoover, obviously, is that, he's not going to give you something for nothing. And we saw this in the movie where when we get Roosevelt, that's going to change, okay? He will loan money, and we'll continue to see that as the Depression picks up here. But then our trade policies with the Hawley Smooth Tariff Act, you can see I added Ben Stein's picture down there, the guy I was talking about the other day. Okay, so let's continue on. Bank failures. Bank failures are going to be a major cause of the Depression here. Okay, can I get some light back there, please? Remember the situation here. One of the things I put on the board the other day, there were a certain type of loans where you could put down a certain amount and borrow a certain amount. What were those called? What were those loans called? Anyone? Margin loans, okay? It's not in your notes, so you might want to write it down or remember it, okay? So these were people that were borrowing money to invest in the stock market, correct? And then when the stock market crashed, they were unable to pay back their debts, okay? I want you to think about farmers as well, okay? So say you're a farmer and the price of wheat drops 40%. Or the price of cotton drops more than 50%. Think about your ability to buy seed for the following year. Think about your ability to pay any employees that you may have. Think about your ability to pay for the tractors that you've bought, the loans you have on tractors, or the loan you have on the farm. Okay? Getting feed for your cattle or your pigs or your other animals. So this is really going to start with the rural areas. Okay, these bank failures will start with the rural areas first and then spread nationwide. And it's going to become a serious problem. Okay, let me explain. Also, foreign depositors. Okay, people, when we stop trading, the amount of cash coming in from other countries, as far as trade was going, coming in and out of our banks, that cash flow really slowed down. Okay, when you loan money, when you put money in the bank, what do they do with it? They loan it out. It just doesn't sit there, right? So if all these loans are being made on your savings, all right, and then people can't pay those loans back, you see the problem here? It's a big one, okay? And it's a problem of cash. Okay? So let me go through this. Okay? The farmers can't get enough money for their wheat. Okay? So they can't pay their mortgages or their loans back. So the banks have less what? Cash. Okay, everybody together now. People got margin loans invested in the stock market, and when the stock market crashed, they couldn't pay back their loans, and the banks had less cash. Okay? People lost their jobs, all right? So they had a hard time paying their mortgages, and when they were unable to do that over a period of times, they were foreclosed on, and the banks had less. Are you following the trend here? So if you're a U.S. citizen and you find out that the banks are running short on cash, what do? You try and get it out before everybody else gets their cash out. So this is called a run on the banks. People are going to run to the banks and try and pull all their cash out, and when they do, the banks have less cash. Then what does the bank do? It closes. Now you've all heard of FDIC, right? FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Okay, that was not around. So your money was not insured in the banks up to $250,000. So when the bank closed its doors, guys, There was nothing. People stood, banged on the door of the bank trying to get their money out. Now, I'll take you back to this this movie, It's a Wonderful Life. How many of you guys seen that movie? Jimmy Stewart. You haven't seen this movie? Okay. So it's every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. You've never seen that? Okay. All right. So anyhow, in this movie, right, he has a savings and loan. And Uncle what's-his-name loses the deposit. Okay? And word spreads that the savings and loan is short on cash. And so everybody runs there. Okay? And he's trying to explain to people, hey, we'll work this situation out. Can you get by 1 month at a time with taking it out? And some people are like, no, I want all my money out. I want to close my account. And so it was a fear and panic that spread here. Okay? So people everywhere want to pull their money out. 632 banks shut their doors in 1929. 1931, 2,098 banks closed. And if the banks closed on you guys, chances are you were never going to see that money again. It was gone. And so people were left penniless, their life savings gone. Now, this is kind of a scary proposition. 1/4 of the country's banks are going to fail. A whole quarter of them. All right? And I think I have a video on this. Yeah. Maybe it'll work. Or maybe I'll have to go find it. I'll go find it real quick. Won't take me long. Bank. Tariffs and bank closures. Here we go.
Black Tuesday may have signaled the start of the Great Depression, but the collapse of the stock market wasn't the only cause of the nation's financial woes. The federal government of the 1920s had supported big business with low interest rates and very little governmental regulation, especially over the stock market. In turn, many businesses borrowed more money to expand than they could ever afford to repay. High tariffs that had kept American business owners happy because they kept foreign-made products out of the U.S. unfortunately meant many European countries were unable and increasingly unwilling to buy American-made products. For instance, Germany was barely able to pay the World War I reparations she owed, and high tariffs like the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, passed by Congress in 1930, only made matters worse. The tariff's goal was to protect American farmers and manufacturers, but it backfired. America found itself unable to sell her farm goods and manufactured products abroad. World trade in turn faltered as foreign countries imposed severe tariffs of their own in retaliation. Many key industries were struggling even before Black Tuesday. Throughout the boom times of the Roaring '20s, agriculture had been in a tailspin. The textile, steel, automobile, and railroad industries were also beginning to feel the pinch. As the unemployment rate increased, most families bought even less. The gap between the handful of wealthy Americans and the rest of the population got even wider. Even though most Americans had not profited from the economic boom of the 1920s, they bought many exciting new products and services during this era of unrestricted credit, living well beyond their means. The banking industry, too, was hard hit. Some banks had invested heavily in the stock market and helplessly stood by as that money vaporized into thin air. As Americans began to realize the pitiful state of the troubled economy, many panicked and rushed to withdraw their savings from banks. Many banks simply couldn't instantly produce the cash demanded, and instead shut their doors, leaving depositors with nothing. Bank failures wiped out nearly 9 million individual savings accounts. 659 banks were closed in 1929, and by 1933, 1/4 of America's banks had failed.
Okay, so pretty devastating. And as the banks begin to fail here, guys, that we're just going to sink, sink further and further into depression. Okay, because all the things we've talked about, the tariffs, production outpacing wages, it's just spiraling downward. Okay, so this is going to have an impact on pretty much every American. All right, now when you talk about the Great Depression, we see everything in black and white. You understand what I mean by that? Visually, we see it in black and white. And that adds to the kind of depressing nature of this. Now, we just watched a color film on the Great Depression, right? Some people, a large part of the population really wasn't depressed in that area, okay? You're talking about 25% of the population was really affected by this in a hard way, okay? Losing their homes, losing, pretty much everything. But more than half the population continued to have jobs, you understand? So it wasn't like the country just shut down and it was chaos, okay? There were problems, okay? If we look here, factory owners couldn't sell their products, so this led to more laid off workers, lost savings. People couldn't afford to buy anything, so not much economic activity. So the Depression started here and spread around the world. 1932, you had 12 million able-bodied Americans that were unemployed. 12 million, you're looking at about 130, 140 million Americans by this time. Okay, so not quite 10%, all right? But those that did have jobs, a lot of them were part-time jobs. I want you to think about this. We got any Colwich people in here? No Colwich people? Okay. They have one grocery store in Colwich, right? What's it called? Krause or something? Yeah. So anyhow, it's a family-owned grocery, all right? And the Depression hits. Well, that grocery is not selling near the amount of goods that it was selling before, right? So they're having a hard time paying their full-time employees. And these full-time employees, you might think, okay, they've been working for them for a long time. I mean, they might be like friends and almost like family. And you really don't want to lay them off. So say you have 10 full-time employees at the grocery. What a lot of employers did, out of heart, they, instead of, dismissing 5 workers, they made all 10 of them part-time. Okay, now, that may allow people to keep a roof over their head, feed their children. It may not. Okay, but so the 10% number here, or around 10% unemployment, is not truly indicative of the employment situation in the United States during the Depression. Okay, and it would get worse. Hoovervilles. These were places where those that lost their homes gathered. Okay, now people just came up with this name. These are empty lots, these vacant lots. The picture on the right down here is actually Central Park. Okay, Central Park in New York City, where you can see a little Hooverville here. Okay, this is an abandoned farm. Okay, one that had, we're going to lose a lot of family farms here. People are going to have to leave. Did you catch that part in the movie Cinderella Man, where they talked about the Reds down at Central Park? I don't know if you guys caught that. They were talking about the Reds that were organizing in Central Park, okay, communists. Guys, when things go bad, really bad, people will look to more extreme ideas to get themselves out of that situation. Does that make sense? And this is what we're going to see all over the world during the Depression. Okay, it's going to happen in Germany. It's going to happen in Italy, okay, and other places. So the effect on society here is that you're going to see marriage rates drop by 1/3. People can't afford to start families, all right? College enrollment will sink because people can't afford it. And you will see a lot of hunger. Okay, this photo right here is a Pulitzer Prize winning photo, and it's pretty much in every history book that is published in the United States for the last, I don't know, 60 years. All right, migrant worker. You kind of look at this woman. A picture says 1,000 words. What goes through your mind? What is she thinking about when this picture was taken? How do I feed my kids? How did I get to this point? Is my husband returning? All these things can go through your mind by looking at this photograph, and it kind of encapsulates the Great Depression. Okay, so that's why it's so often used in our history books. Okay. All right, so you did see some instances of violence during the Great Depression as far as hunger strikes going on. Well, not really hunger strikes, but hunger marches, okay, where people, would steal. They would riot, they would loot, okay, to get food. Really good part in that movie we watched where the boy goes and steals, from the butcher, and his dad makes him take it back. It wasn't rampant, but this did happen. Violence and looting. Okay, you had to have forced evictions, and this was very difficult, guys, because somebody might have lived in a house for 20 years, but the bank still owned it. The loan hadn't been paid back yet, and you're removing people from their homes because they don't really own it. Does that make sense? It's like the repo man taking your car, but this is where you live. And so sometimes, the sheriff was usually the guy that had to do this. Think about this on a farm. Say that, the bank owned the farm, you were paying it back, and maybe that farm had been in your family for some generations, or you couldn't pay the taxes on it. And the sheriff comes and, he's got to remove you physically because you don't want to leave. It's a very sad time. There's a very good book written on this and a movie made out of it. I don't know if any of you guys have read The Grapes of Wrath or seen the movie Grapes of Wrath. Okay, it's written by John Steinbeck, okay? Great American author. I used to show that movie in class when I first started teaching the Depression, but most of my students fell asleep, so I quit showing it, okay? You can get something out of it, but it's about the Joad family, and they're a farm family, and from Arkansas. And you have the Dust Bowl and so forth, but it's kind of their story of their farm going under and going to California, okay, where a lot of people fled this part of the country and went west, okay. More people actually went to cities than went to California, but the book, as Steinbeck would have you believe, everybody went to California, all right. Which is kind of a misconception. Anyhow, Steinbeck has some very strong socialist themes in his book, The Grapes of Wrath. It's a great piece of American literature that students, when I first started teaching, had read. You're not reading it anymore, okay? Just like The Jungle. Most of you aren't reading that anymore, and I don't understand why, but because there's great American historical lessons to learn, and it's very good literature as well. So anyhow, 1 million family farms are lost between 1930 and 1934. Okay, the worst year of the Dust Bowl, guys, is 1935. Okay, so this is happening before the worst year of the Dust Bowl. How many people live on the average family farm in 1930? What would you say? 8? 10? You got mom and pa, right? Maybe grandma, grandpa? You got some kids? Maybe the aunt that never married? The sister that never married? Something like that, okay? So conservatively, let's say 6. That's 6 million people. from this part of the country, family farms that are going to go under. All right, those people have to go somewhere. They can't stay on the farm. Okay, so we're going to see a lot of migration of population. All right, so 1932, as the Depression really sets in, remember the bonus bill? Otherwise known as the Adjusted Compensation Act, where you got $1.25 for every day you served overseas, $1 for every day you served at home. You could borrow up to 25% of it, get about $200, get you into an apartment if you're a veteran. All right. And remember, the rest of that insurance policy doesn't mature until 1945. But the veterans want their money now. 25,000 veterans descend upon Washington, D.C. A couple members of Congress introduce a bill to give them all that money. The government doesn't have this money to pay to the veterans. So the bill is introduced into Congress. All these people come to support that bill. 25,000 of them. Now, do these people have money to stay in hotels in Washington, D.C.? No. Okay. Where are they staying? They're like hanging out in empty government buildings, on vacant lots and so forth. They built little shanty towns right there within sight of the U.S. Capitol and close to the White House. All right? So the bill fails in Congress. They did not get their money. Most of the 25,000 left, but about 2,500 stayed. Where else are you going to go? You got no money. Might as well stay here. We have a little shack. We'll just stay here. Well, some of those people in the camp started causing some problems, and Hoover got tired of it. Okay? So he called in the army. Wait a second here. The President of the United States is calling in the United States Army okay, to drive out veterans of World War I out of a shanty town that they're living in because they just wanted to get their insurance policies cashed in. Now, in charge of this operation for President Hoover are going to be two famous Americans. General Douglas MacArthur will be in charge. His second in command will be General Dwight Eisenhower, okay, of Kansas. All right. This is probably not their proudest moment in their military careers. Let's see if I have it somewhere. There it is. I actually have a picture of this. Okay, there's a picture of Eisenhower and MacArthur and some of the bonus army is what they called them. I'll pass this around. So, you're in this camp, you're a World War I veteran, and you see the army on horseback, the cavalry, and then they actually bring in some tanks and stuff, and they're coming down the street towards your camp. Looks like, to me, a parade. Hey, look, guys, the army's coming. It's a parade. But they're not having a parade. They've been ordered to remove you from your camp. And if you don't leave, to burn it down. Okay, the president just called out the army on its veterans. Whoa, boy. This is not going to turn out good. Okay? This is the aftermath. Okay, you can see the Capitol in the background here. And you can see the shantytown burning. Okay? Shots are fired. Violence breaks out. They're using tear gas. Okay? It's chaos. Okay? And 2 people are killed. Okay? 2 veterans are killed, including and also a child that dies from ingesting the tear gas. How's this look for Hoover? Not good. Not good. Okay? And we have an election coming up. All right? this will be the downfall of Herbert Hoover. Okay? And maybe if I hit this button, this video will play. Maybe it won't. What about this one? Yeah, I have two videos here. One on the Dust Bowl, okay, and one on the Bonus Army.
Then, to make matters even worse, drought,
2 minutes,
coupled with the overproduction of crops in the Great Plains, turned the area from Texas to Oklahoma into a dust bowl. In 1934, strong winds blew tons of dust from the plains all the way to the East Coast. Dust even coated New York City and settled on ships 500 miles out to sea in the Atlantic Ocean. Unemployment and poverty hurt everyone, especially children. Many left school to work and help their families survive, and many more went hungry and malnourished. Diet-related illnesses like rickets and scoliosis became all too common. Once again, President Hoover tried to reassure the nation by saying, recovery is just around the corner. But it was not to be, and more Americans grew disenchanted with his policies and administration. Secretary of the Treasury, Andrew Mellon, echoed the beliefs of most of Hoover's advisors, that the economy would recover on its own. Hoover thought the government must take some action, but feared making government too strong, and so he chose a conservative approach, calling together business, banking, and labor leaders, and urging them to work together and avoid laying off workers or calling strikes. Then he authorized the expenditure of federal funds for large public works projects, like Boulder Dam, later renamed Hoover Dam, to create jobs and wages for thousands of workers. Hoover felt giving direct help to needy Americans would undermine their self-respect and looked to private charities to help the hungry. Instead, he approved more than $2 billion in emergency financing to businesses, hoping their renewed success would trickle down to the people who needed assistance. It didn't. Rather, unemployment rose even higher, and Americans were caught in a web of despair.
Okay. I can't seem to find that other video. All right, so this will really, like I said, be kind of the end for Hoover politically, okay? We'll take a look at some of the things he was willing to do during the Depression to help folks, okay? And we'll start with a huge public works program, okay? When you hear the word public, we've talked about this before. Public meaning what? Public, government, okay? Works, jobs. What are these? Government jobs, okay? Public works. You got it? All right, so Public Works Program, by the end of its term, they spent $2 billion on building stuff, roads, bridges, buildings, schools, all different sorts of things. Just putting people to work, okay? Now, this is a little bit different, guys, than private industry creating jobs. This is government creating jobs. Now, people were more than willing to work, okay? Now, some of these jobs were not really efficient. I mean, you look at this picture here. You've got 100 men here carrying wheelbarrows. Okay, by the 1930s, guys, there were better ways to move rocks and dirt than wheelbarrows. Okay, more efficient ways. But this was giving people jobs that gave them dignity and so forth. All right. Another thing Roosevelt was willing to do is the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. Okay, so here he's going to loan money, another $2 billion to banks, railroads, etc., to try and keep those afloat. If you could keep those businesses afloat, you would save those jobs. And as long as people had jobs, they had money. Okay, and money to spend, money to put a roof over their head, and so forth. All right, so these were important to individuals. All right, again, loans. You see this word here, okay? Federal Home Loan Bank Act. Now, this one doesn't make a lot of sense, guys, but oftentimes when government does stuff, it doesn't make sense. Okay, and this is one of those instances. This is to help people with paying their mortgages. Okay, what is the mortgage in essence? What is that? What is a mortgage? It's a loan on a what?
A house.
A house. Come on, wake up, people. Okay? It's a loan. So if you're going to loan money to people to help pay back their loans, how's that going to solve the problem? Is it going to solve any problem here? Might solve the problem of keeping a roof over somebody's house for 6 more months. Right? Okay, so good intentions, not really smart policy, it's a Band-Aid. Okay? And this is what Hoover called one of the great tragedies of the Depression is homelessness. Okay? What's one of the great tragedies of the Depression?
Homelessness.
Very good. All right. Oh. Yeah. All right, so Hoover, as we know, is going to refuse to give money directly to individuals. Yes? Why? Why is it dangerous?
They might not be smart with it.
Okay, they might not be smart with it, like, I don't know, buying food.
They'll ask for more.
Well, yeah, they'll ask for more.
They're just going to rely on the government.
They'll rely on it. Okay? Now, let's not be heartless here, people. Okay, well, let's have a discussion here. We're going to talk about this. Okay? Can we talk about this? All right, let's talk about it. So, you guys are Catholics, right? Right? What do you believe in? Social justice, right? Huh? So, if there's an ability to help somebody that's struggling, should you do it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Hoover called on charities, state and local governments, to help feed the hungry. Okay? But the federal government, you guys have already taken government and understand the Constitution. And you know the roles and the powers of the government under the Constitution. Right? You know this. So anywhere in there in the U.S. Constitution, the federal government, is this one of their roles? Is to take care of people, individuals. It's not. Okay? But this is what people are going to start to expect. This is what Hoover feared. Is that if the federal government starts doing this, it'll never stop. Okay? It damaged the spirit of the individual when they become dependent on somebody else for their subsistence. This country was built on the ideals of individualism. Okay, now that may not jive particularly with the Catholic religion. Okay? This is why Catholics are going to flock to Franklin Roosevelt. Most of your great-grandparents were probably, if they were Catholic, were probably Democrats. You understand? Because of those themes of social justice and taking care of the poor. Now, I'm not going to say that your grandparents, great-grandparents were wrong. Okay, because this is what they felt. Okay? But was Hoover wrong? I mean, look where we are today. Not to mention just how many people are dependent on the government for subsistence, but what it does to their spirit. What it does to the individual inside. They can't take it, they have this feeling that they can't do it themselves. They can't take care of themselves or their families. And then it becomes an entitlement. It becomes this, I deserve this. I am owed this. Now, you could have an honest conversation with somebody that said that you deserve, that they deserve this. And maybe convince them that they don't. Okay? But they may have already convinced themselves that they do. And I think this is, as a society, is something that we're going to decide. You know, I mean, if Bernie Sanders wins the Democratic nomination, you're going to have a clear option between government taking care of people and giving them stuff for free, which isn't free, but people will get stuff for free. And somebody that doesn't want to follow that path, okay? This path begins right here. I mean, the switch, it all takes place here. The switch of the United States turns here between Hoover and Roosevelt, okay? Now, this is a dust storm. Yes?
Yeah.
See this cloud? It's dark. It's scary. You're out on the farm. This thing comes across. I mean, it gets in everything. Now, any of you guys have family that, I don't know, have ever passed down stories about the Dust Bowl here? Yeah. Anything you remember or want to share with us about it? Or you've taken Kansas history? Any of you guys take Kansas history? Coach Lawbon? If you go to school in Kansas, I think you have to take it in college. I had to take it. That was the hardest class I ever took. Guys, I had Dr. Craig Minor as my professor at Wichita State. And he wrote the book on Kansas history, like 9 of them. Guys, if you ever find out when you're taking a college class that the professor wrote the book for the class, find another professor. Dude, that would be one of the hardest classes you ever take, all right? I mean, it's Kansas history. How hard could it be, right? Oh my gosh. Now, there is an actual technical term for this dust cloud. Okay? Have you guys seen the last installment, the second to last installment of Mission Impossible? When he's out in Dubai, okay? It's called a haboob. That's right, haboob. All right? And I'm going to show you a video of what a haboob looks like in color. Hopefully.
How do I know I'm getting the best price on this? Won't match any competitor's price. What about this? Price match guaranteed.
Bye-bye. This is good stuff, guys. This is what I'm using. It's pretty freaky, huh? Yeah. That was in Arizona just a couple of years ago. So, just a couple, stories with this. If you haven't heard these stories before, when the dust storms came, guys, it was impossible to keep it out of your house. I mean, you couldn't keep the dust out. So, I mean, people would try and put up wet sheets over the doors and windows and so forth. And who this particularly affected were children and the elderly, okay? Because you would inhale a lot of this dust, okay? And it would cause all types of breathing problems, asthma, okay, and black lung. I mean, if you've ever been, I'm a baseball coach, so I drag the baseball field, okay? And some days, man, the dust is just, and I know it's going right into my nose, into my mouth, and I'll go home. I know this is kind of gross. Blow your nose, and just you can see it, right? Or in your ears when you clean your ears. So, people, for infants, they would cover the cribs with wet towels to try and keep that dust out, so children, would be able to breathe. But a lot of people died because of this. Now, when I took Kansas history, one of the most interesting stories that Dr. Miner taught me was when it was the 1870s, and they had the grasshopper infestation. Have you heard about this? You guys? Okay. Now, the way he described it is it looked more like a snowstorm than a haboob, because the grasshoppers that came that year had these white bellies. Okay, so when they came in, it looked like a snowstorm. And when they came in by the hundreds of millions, and they would eat everything, right? They would eat the farm tools, anything that was wood and fences, everything. Okay, and they did this for a couple of years. And then, for some reason, they went back towards Colorado. They all went flying back to Colorado, and there was an early freeze that year, okay, in Colorado, and they all died. And so they never came back. Okay, but you've seen these grasshoppers in the summertime. Every one of these land on you, they're like hard, and those really dry summers, they're kind of a nuisance. Can you imagine millions of those things? I mean, it's like, it's biblical type stuff. I mean, it's scary. All right, so Hoover, is going to try and do a few things real quick here. Worst drought in recent history. Congress votes $45 million, okay, to help farmers feed their livestock, but they won't give $25 million to feed farmers. These heartless son of a guns. They'll feed animals, but they won't feed people. Is there any logic here?
No.
Come on. There's got to be some logic with this. Oh, there you go. If you can keep the animals alive, then the people can eat the animals. Okay? They did offer $20 million in loans for farmers. Okay, so, yeah, but this is just loans on top of loans, really. Okay, now some people could, if they had paid off their farm and equipment and so forth, needed some money to, grow crops and plant and so forth, that would be helpful. But generally, life was very difficult. Okay, so we're in the middle of the Depression here. I'm not sure what we got going on next here. We're going to move over to Foreign Affairs tomorrow and kind of be wrapping it up. What is today? Tuesday? How many slides do I have left? A couple of those are just pictures. Yeah, we're looking at Friday, people. 4 on Friday? Okay, start looking over your notes now. Friday.